Okay. Moving on then to CSR, right? So let's take CSR as it stood when it was first implemented. According to me, CSR was a formal, and I'm taking a slightly bigger picture view here, but CSR was a formal admission by government that it is unable to do what government is supposed to do, right? Which is to make sure that the average citizen receives that level of service and benefit and protection which is required. So that was being outsourced to NPOs. And in order to fund those NPOs, you basically said, hello, corporate India, 2% of your profits have to be uh, put into CSR. And the way those profits are to be calculated is by a specific section. It's, I think, 198 or something like that of the Companies Act. That's a matter of detail, but the fact remains you have profits, then 2% of the profit you put into NPOs. And the original version of CSR did not discriminate between the type of NPO. It was reasonably clear that you have to be putting money into sort of activities out there in the field, right? Which is to say, you actually have to be working with education or health or whatever, but you can't be purely funding another entity, which in turn will fund an NPO. That does not qualify as CSR. Over time, they evolved that to say that, okay, as a company, you're spending money on CSR, you should also be getting impact assessment reports done. So then they said, okay, fair enough. Out of your CSR spend each year, up to 5% can be on impact assessment, and then in certain circumstances, 10%, etc., etc. Right? That's the way the world worked. I think profit world was reasonably pleased because there was scope for funding, and it was a sort of a relatively beneficial arrangement from the point of view of not-for-profit organizations. What we have seen in 2020, and I think all of us are aware of it, is that the Companies Act is to be amended, right? That amendment, I think, has also been sort of brought onto the statute book, remains to be notified, so it's not fully in force yet. The amendment says a number of things. What it does is it says that you can only be a Section 8 company, and I'm not talking about now statutory or entities or anything, entities established by Parliament or something. That's not where I'm going. But if you're a private sector player, then you can avail of CSR, and therefore a company will only make a donation to you under CSR if you in turn are a Section 8 company. That effectively puts into jeopardy lines of funding which private sector NPOs, which are not companies, which are not Section 8 or historical Section 25 companies, have tied up. Because you are now, a company can still make a donation to you, but that donation will no longer be included in that company's 2% CSR mandatory contribution. It will then be something which that company makes. That company may or may not be able to claim a deduction based on your 12A80G status. But in order to fulfill its CSR obligations, the company will have to make another separate donation to another entity, which is a Section 8 company or a Section 25 company. Clear? So first thing is, yes, if you're not a Section 8 company today, right, you will have great difficulty in tying up CSR funding in terms of the Companies Act. And it's important when I say in terms of the Companies Act, because the Companies Act mandates corporate social responsibility on Indian companies. There are some Indian companies which make donations in excess of this. That donation is also part of CSR in the more broad sense, but it is not Companies Act qualifying CSR, right? The obvious answer to that then is that, listen, I'm a trust, I'm a society, I'm something like that. I may still get donations, but it's going to be way more difficult for me to get donations, right? So can I now set up a Section 8 company? Again, of course you can. It's setting up a Section 8 company of itself is not the end of the world. It's a bit of time, but it's a far easier process than, say, 12A80G registration or FCRA registration. It takes, like a month or so, whatever, you'll get it done. Or you should get it done in that time. But again, in terms of CSR, sort of Companies Act qualified CSR, you have to fulfill certain criteria, etc. It's practically impossible for a brand new entity to fulfill those criteria. So, that really will not take you very far unless you have the capacity to hold out for the years that it's going to take you to qualify for CSR, and for, to manage within that situation with other sources of funding that may or may not be available. Now, why is government doing this? I don't have any answer to provide on the basis of something which I have read or something which was discussed in Parliament or anything of that sort. But when you look at the impact of this, right, what is the impact? The impact is to make it a little more difficult for trusts and societies to operate, perhaps very much more difficult. And the impact is also to say that, guess what? We don't want 700 NPOs running around the countryside. We'd rather have a lesser number of NPOs. Because if all of the winnowing effect that I anticipate it will have, you're going to see some smaller NPOs get under some very serious stress. Aside from COVID, please remember, this CSR thing had nothing to do with COVID. It was done long back, right? And therefore, we as Government of India will be dealing with a lesser number of NPOs. Is there reason for it? I'm sure there's reason for it. I don't want to comment on that reason. I believe that this is not a good thing. That is my individual opinion. That is not the opinion of the government, and that certainly it has no bearing on my professional analysis of the statute or its impact. I still think it's not a good thing, but it is what it is. And consequently, the only thing that I can say is I can remind you of where I started this conversation. And I said, bear in mind, as NPOs, generally Government of India for the past 10 to 15 years doesn't like you guys too much, right? No answers as to why. And you do see a very paradoxical situation where NPOs are subject to registration. They are subject to all these very strict compliances, and effectively, there's a bias against them, if you will. I use the word bias very loosely here. I don't mean that there's a bias in that sense, but you have to, as an NPO, there's no leeway accorded to you. You have to do all of this in exactly this way. Equally, NPOs are expected to sort of go out there and do good things for the world when the world needs it and when Government of India asks you to do it. So, for example, literally the fact that FCRA is asking some of you to, the Ministry of Home Affairs is asking some of you to say, please tell us what you're doing about COVID, tells you that there is an expectation that some of you are doing something about COVID, right? And that is a paradox. But again, and this is where it becomes perhaps, and which I will probably tell me I'm being a little too blunt, but this is again, I think, the nature of the beast which we are all dealing with. This beast is the regulatory regime we all have to address. And rather than hope for something and count on that hope becoming reality, I would recommend that each one of us very carefully look at what we need to do in order to survive. Because I think the obvious fact is that India needs her not-for-profit organizations, right? A lot of you who are out there are doing stellar work and things which I, sitting in my office and doing my work, can only admire, right? That doesn't change the fact that everything that we do is subject to this element of regulation, and we have to pick that up, right? It also ties into the fact of, can I start some business venture on the side? This is the last mile. And what I would say is that in terms of the Income Tax Act, of course, you can start a business venture on the side. The Tax Act is very clear that your 12A ATG registration continues in full force, even if you're doing that business, so long as that business is within the scheme of your larger objects and it's working towards your charitable purpose, and the revenue you get from that stream is less than 20% of your total revenue. So, for example, if you earn 100 rupees in a year, not more than 20 rupees can come from your business, 80 rupees has to come through donations or everything else. That's the way the Tax Act is. No rocket science or no new change to this, right? However, in implementation, over the recent years, again, the revenue has taken some very harsh views. There have been judgments and decisions where the revenue has said, guess what? I'm challenging this. Finally, on appeal, some IT/80 or Supreme Court will say, no, the revenue's construct is wrong and this NPO should continue as it is. But during that time, you are subject, of course, to tax litigation. You are subject to a question mark over your 12A ATG status, depending on what happens in that litigation. And this is obviously a problem. So to wind up, what I would say is that the issues we face today are exacerbated because of this lockdown. As far as concerns the lockdown, I think NPOs are, for all practical purposes, in the same boat as everyone else in this country, right? Don't forget, even though you're a not-for-profit organization, you are an organization, you have employees, you have work, you have to do things. It's just that you're not working for profit, which is drawn back out into the shareholder or the founder's pockets. That profit is, or the surplus is plowed back into your work. But otherwise, the lockdown affects you as much as it affects me, as much as it affects the biggest company. The scale is different, the facts are different, and the details obviously are different, but the construct is by and large similar. The larger set of issues which have been called out in the questions which you raised and which I have also sort of added to are issues which you need to address irrespective of COVID. All these changes to CSR, all the FCRA concerns, all the other stuff around 12A ATG re-registration, etc. All of this was long before COVID. COVID is going to go away at some point. I mean, in the sense that we will be dealing with it as a society in a slightly, perhaps more flexible manner. But those issues that you have called out in your initial set of questions remain. And what I would urge you guys to do is not to panic, because that is just not happening. You have to very actively focus on getting your organization in shape to be able to transition from the old world NPO, which, let's say, was able to operate fairly easily up to 2005, 2010, and then to a certain extent with some greater difficulty after that, into the NPO that is going to be prevalent in India over the next 5 to 10 years, right? Which is 100% compliant, fully aware of what is happening out there, the limitations imposed by the law, as well as the benefits available at the law. And most importantly, which is in a position to address the queries or the, let's say, the requisitions which will come from the regulators. And I use regulators to mean, government of India down to state government, down to tax guys, down to everyone else. That's the most important thing. And I think that wraps us up for today, unless anyone has any questions. I'm sorry, I've just droned on endlessly.